Welcome into Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And man, it is so cool to see there are guys in the building, and there are some new guys in the building. The rookies are starting to trickle in as well. That it just feels like that time of year that football's starting to finally ramp up a little bit again with some of these off-season workouts. There have been guys, that just work out here throughout the whole off-season, a few guys here and there, but now it's starting to feel a lot more official as we are into this phase. I mean, look at that. Baker Mayfield out there throwing a football. Just such a good sight to see. So tell everyone a little bit about what's going on around the facility these days. Yeah,
there's a lot. In fact, we didn't even talk about it beforehand, but there's also the National Coaching Academy going on.
Yes.
With all those prospective coaches trying to advance in their profession and getting just invaluable work and insights from so many people. You and I have both done some panels with them. So that's been great. But yes, they not only are we progressing through phase 2 of the offseason program, which you pointed out that Baker was throwing passes, but there were no defensive players on the other side of that.
It does make it easier, just a little bit. I would love to play quarterback if that was how it was.
In just a couple weeks, however, they will start phase 3, and that's when you get the OTAs and you can do you can't have contact, but you can do real type drills. But also, just coming into the building today, this morning, were all the Bucs rookies, a lot of them for the very first time. And they're coming in because rookie minicamp is this weekend, and they all are coming in and getting their physicals. And probably, I'd be willing to bet before this day is over, we're going to have some news about some of those draft picks signing, because all they need to do is be in the building, because it's kind of all taken care of, and they'll get some contracts signed. Some of them will take a little bit longer, and we'll be able to announce the undrafted players that actually sign. So there's a lot going on, and minicamp starts on Friday, and there'll be about 26 tryout players involved, and some of those tryout players always make it. Like last year, Marquise Watts was a tryout player. Historically, Adam Humphries was a tryout player, Cam Brate. So it's a pretty important weekend.
Yes, it 100% is, and it's so great to just get a chance to finally lay our own eyes on these guys, see them in Bucs practice jerseys, and get a look at what they all look like together. And we also get a chance to hear from a lot of the position coaches, which we don't hear from them a ton during the year, although, shameless plug, I have all of them on the radio show I do each fall. So if you're a junkie that likes to hear from those position group guys, we do that. But for the most part, for press conferences, you hear from your coordinators and your head coach. You don't hear from them as often, but we got to hear from most, if not all of them, this last week, and it's great timing to hear about all the new rookies they have in their rooms, guys that free agents they brought in, just the state of their position rooms a little bit. And one of those guys, wide receiver coach McClendon, talked. So tell us a little bit about what you learned from that one.
Yeah, Brian McClendon. So this was really our first time to talk to him because he's new, came from the college ranks, obviously, and has been kind of a coveted coach by NFL teams for a while now. Finally decided to make that move, and he said it was because of the people in the building, that it was the right time for him to make that move, not just the players. But he does inherit a pretty good group, and he got a new one in the draft in Jalen McMillan, who was a productive guy in a very crowded offense at Washington. And what as you can see here, what Coach McClendon liked about him is his versatility to play both outside positions and in the slot. Now, the interesting part there is that at Washington, McMillan actually played like 95% of his snaps out of the slot. So it's kind of important, however, that we're correct, that Coach McClendon is correct about him being able to do great on the outside, because later in that same day of press conferences, it was made clear that Chris Godwin was going to go back to playing mostly in the slot like he did for years before last year, when the offense and Dave Canales and all them, they made him more of an outside receiver to kind of take advantage of some of his other talents. But he's going back into the slot, and I personally think that's probably a good thing. And we actually used this graphic about a month ago, but I thought it was worth resurfacing, because now that we know more officially that he's definitely going to be more in the slot. If you look at the progression there, around 70 or more % of his snaps in the slot for those 3 years, and his yards per game and the yards that he created after the catch, you can see how his output changed a little bit last year in that different role. So put him back in the slot where he's really demonstrated he has all the tools there to be one of what they call a big slot receiver, and I think that could be a big boon for the Bucs offense.
Yeah, and I think he is excited about that. I have another shameless plug. I'm full of them. This time we just did an episode of The Bay with Chris not that long ago, and we talked a little bit about, I mean, it was a lot of things that are about off the field stuff, but then the one thing we did really hit on the field was Liam Coen, what he thinks about him, and he brought up the idea of getting to go back into the slot some more and being pretty excited about that idea.
It's going to be Liam's Cooper Cup.
Yes, which, man, who wouldn't want to be if it works out
That's
like that?
a lot of volume.
It's a lot of volume for sure. And so speaking of Liam Coen, I'm sure that was part of what came out of his press conference, was talking about Chris Godwin's role. But what else did you learn about what a Liam Coen offense might look like?
Well, and actually a couple people said it. One of the biggest changes from last year's offense here in Tampa to this year's is that there's going to be a lot more motion before and at the snap. And we also, as Thad Lewis said, we also have Josh Grizzard from the Dolphins as our new pass game coordinator on offense, and he spoke as well. And he comes from an offense that was the most motion heavy in the league, and had that one play that kind of took the league by storm last year that they called it speed motion, and it usually used it.
Can't imagine why with that team.
Yeah, they usually used it with Tyreek Hill, and unlike most motions, which usually go from the outside in, this one usually went from the inside out. So like Tyreek Hill might be lined up pretty close to the line with some other receivers here, and right before the snap, he would motion behind those guys and then take off. And what they had exactly perfect, so that they didn't get a penalty for illegal motion, is that he would turn up field at exactly the time of the snap, which involved having extremely good coordination and timing with the quarterback, but they were able to do it. And then, of course, his speed made the difference as well. So not every team maybe has the tools to pull off speed motion, but it's something we could see. But at the very least, we should see a lot more motion before and at the snap. And as you can see here, like I said, the Dolphins were number one in that group. The Buccaneers were 25th in terms of what percentage of their passing plays involved motion.
Wow, that's really interesting.
So,
and I have to imagine that it's really helpful, as much as it can increase kind of some of the discipline and coordination you need, it also just to help Baker with reading situations. I mean, it just gives you so much information about a defense that it's got, even if it's not the actual thing that leads to the play itself.
Oh yeah,
just,
sure.
I mean,
that's
that
one of the
information.
reasons.
Yeah, that's why you do it, is all that information. And then if it can also lead to a, help on the play like what Tyreek was doing, then great. But I'm sure quarterbacks are going to every little bit of information.
Well, that's a good segue into the next point, in that, the first thing that Liam Coen said to the team when he had his first meeting with them about a month ago was about the running game, and they have to improve the running game. And he has stuck on that message and was on it again. It was his number one thing on Monday when he talked. And so, of course, the Buccaneers want to improve the running game. They were last in the league in 2022, and last year they wanted to improve the running game. And it did get better as the season went on, but by the end of the year, they were still last in the league. So it's one thing to say we're going to run the ball better, and it's another thing to figure out how to do it. And some of that involves personnel. I mean, we did draft a big center with our first pick.
Helpful.
We drafted another running back too. But some of it obviously is scheme and approach. And what I find interesting, and this is not revolutionary by any means, but Liam Coen was saying that he's going to make it so that the offense has options in the huddle and at the line of scrimmage. So they have 2 or maybe even 3 plays that are sent in, and when they see the defense, they may see that, hey, we were going to run right, but there's a ton of people right over there, so let's not do that. Let's run this way. Or, hey, we've got man-to-man coverage, and we got Mike out here and a guy he can beat. Let's switch to a pass play. And all of that means more responsibility for Baker Mayfield.
And I know we also got to hear from the running back coach, Skip Pete. He was one of the other people that did this. So, and you brought up that they did draft another running back. So what did you learn from specifically the running back coach about how they're going to try to improve that this year?
Well, I think that Skip wants to have not just one bell cow back, which Rachaad White, as we've talked about a couple times here, led the NFL among running backs and offensive snaps. And I don't think they want that again, even though it was impressive. And he did have, 1,500 yards from scrimmage. So it was a good season for him, but I think they want to have multiple guys that can play on any down, and that's why they drafted Bucky Irving, who they think can play on every down. And what Coach Pete really likes about Bucky Irving is how sudden he is, how quickly he accelerates. So he gets the handoff and he gets to top speed quickly, and he hits the hole right away, which was a thing they had to work with Rachaad on during the season, and he got better at that as the season went along. But he gets to that hole quickly, and if he gets to the second level, not only can he make guys miss, but as we noted, I think last week, he led FBS backs last year in forced missed tackles. So he just does a really good job of not taking direct hits, just finding a way to make a move and glancing off of those. And Coach Pete said he he seeks to run through contact, not to contact. So I think there's a lot of high hopes that he can add quite a bit to this rushing attack.
And you brought up our first-round draft pick being a big part of hopefully what the running game could look like as well. We also have a new offensive line coach. We got to hear from him this week for the first time. So what did you learn from Coach Carberry?
Well, it's still too early, obviously, to know exactly how this line is going to line up when it's all said and done, and there will be some changes, obviously. But it does sound like, as we heard during the draft, that Graham Barton is going to start out working at center. I think probably that's where he'll end up, but seeing how it goes, they could also try him at one of the guard positions. He could be the solution at left guard, in which case then you have Robert Hainsey and maybe some others battling to start at center. But I think their idea is to play him at center, and then that means you have quite a big competition at the left guard spot. And believe me, this is no way set in stone. This is just something I drew up.
Breaking news, Scott Smith announces.
I mean, I think we do know that Tristan and Luke will be the starting tackles.
You're going out on a limb for that one.
But Ben Bredeson, Sua Opeta, I got Sua Opeta backing up Cody Mock, but he could be starting a left guard. Or Elijah Klein might be so impressive as a rookie in his first camp that he wins a starting job. But this is one possibility of a two-deep on the offensive line. And the great thing about that is, as Coach Carberry was saying, they have a chance, if those guys live up to expectations, to be deep, so that if the inevitable, now we've been pretty lucky in recent years with offensive linemen, knock on wood, but if the inevitable injuries happen, you feel really good about the next guy stepping in and you're not losing anything.
Yep.
So I think they have that, especially on those three interior spots. You could probably start any of those six guys and feel good about it.
And then finally, we did get to hear from another new coach this year, T-Mac, Thomas McGahee, the special teams coordinator. And we've talked a few times about the new special teams rules this year and the way that might impact some of your guys that make the roster, don't make the roster, the priorities there.
Right.
So tell us what he was asked about specifically when it came to the return game and what might be influenced for some of these guys on the team.
Well, he's still figuring that out, and it's hey, as long as we're doing shameless plugs, you can go back and listen to Jeff and I interviewing Coach T-Mac on Salty Dogs a few weeks back, and we talked to him about this new kickoff play, and it really is kind of a mystery. It's an opportunity for some teams to get an advantage, but it's also kind of a mystery how it's all going to unfold. But one thing that a lot of people, like Jason Light was talking about after the draft, have started to say is that it's going to be somewhat like an offensive play, like a play with a line of scrimmage, because nobody can move until the ball is caught. And so, how do you work that? What kind of players do you need? What kind of returners do you need? And he mentioned, he really only mentioned in passing candidates for the kick return job, but he did mention these three names, and that included Bucky Irving, the rookie, and that makes a lot of sense. If we're talking about a guy who accelerates extremely quickly and is good at hitting the hole, which is kind of what this play might be like, and then breaking tackles, you can see how he could be a big play in the making on kick return. So I'm looking forward to the possibility of Bucky Irving back there as the kickoff returner, but we're a long way away from knowing who that is.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch in training camp for sure, as we see who all's back there taking reps and what that looks like. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. We'll be back next week, so we'll see you then.